Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with devilsdigest.com.
All right, Joe, we are here, settled in and still in the new digs, getting a feel for the studio here at 3TV CBS 5. We are kicking off, I can't even believe this, season 13 of Speak of the Devils. The show's about to turn 12 years old here in a couple days, our next month, and then 13th season. It's mind-boggling.
This is wild stuff, man. Like, if a baby was born on the first day that we did this show, it would be about 12 years old. And that would be someone that's like a real human being.
It's like
you know what
like
I'm
a
saying?
sixth grader or something?
Something like that, right? I mean, this is wild. We didn't really, have a design for the future when we got this thing started in 2011, but I don't know if we were thinking 12, 13 years, well in advance of a decade with this new technology coming in season 13. So we're fired up about it. We haven't really had ourselves a real full show. We had a great time, of course, speaking with the Rashada family. That was awesome. If you haven't checked that out, do that. And maybe not right now, but after you listen to or watch this show. But we really haven't gathered together to talk about Sun Devil football, Sun Devil sports. Brother, there's a lot to talk about, and not even just focusing on the fact that we're not that far away from fall camp. There's a lot going on in Sun Devil universe right now.
There absolutely is. And so we got a lot to talk about today. And you mentioned, this is the unofficial start of our 13th season because we're going to look ahead and start looking at this 2023 season in earnest and in detail. We're going to be ranking our top 10 most important non-quarterback Sun Devil players as we do every year. And so we're going to count down from 10 to 1, the guys that we think are going to be the most crucial to determining this level of success this upcoming year. The recruiting trail. I mean, this used to be kind of a slow time of year, Joe, but not anymore. I saw a fact today that, a lot of these classes, over the last couple of years, that like teams across the country are now putting together between June 1st and July 4th a huge section of their signing classes. So this is a very active recruiting period. ASU's landed 5 brand new verbal commits for the 2024 class since we last joined you. You're going to hear from one of those guys a little bit later on, Plas Johnson, a local guy from Chaparral High School. And also ASU, as we talked about in our last episode, picked up a blue chip commitment for the 2025 class from quarterback Michael Tollefson. He's going to be joining us a little bit later on, talk about why he chose the Sun Devils as the place to continue his college career. The MLB Draft was just conducted, and a lot of Sun Devils got to hear their name, Joe. So we're going to dive into that as well. So much to discuss, but I think perhaps even beyond just the 13th season premiere, so to speak, another piece of big show-related news that's coming up. Folks, if you're in the Valley, keep Friday, August 4th open on your calendar.
If you're not in the Valley, get in the Valley. I don't care if you're on a different continent. I don't care if you're on a different planet. Get on back to Earth. Come on to Tempe, Arizona, the Graduate Hotel in Tempe. Awesome spot. Here's what's going to be happening that day. 6 p.m., Friday, August the 4th. Brad and I, we're taking this show on the road. We're doing Speak of the Devils live at the Graduate Hotel. It is going to be an incredible time. We are going to arrange some incredible guests y'all are going to love. We're going to be there. We've been working with the great folks on that location. There are going to be some drink specials. There's going to be food. It's an awesome setup. I'd actually never been there before we took a quick look at it. It's a really cool place down there, kind of by Gamage Auditorium there around Apache, kind of near Mill Avenue. So it's awesome spot. We're going to have a heck of a time. We're going to be doing our show, like I said, live in front of hopefully all of you. Come one, come all. Free admission, free parking. That's a real big deal if you're in Tempe, Arizona. We're going to have an excellent time. We're going to be talking a lot about it as time goes on, but we'd love for y'all to join us. It's going to be a blast to kick off this 2023 season of Sun Devil football.
Yeah, it's going to be our first time out there in front of a live audience, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. And then after the show's over, you're going to be sticking around a post-show Sun Devil Summit. Those things always definitely.
It has been a while. Like when it was, I mean, it's been a couple years at least.
It's interesting, yeah. So we have to go like, is the official thing when Jedi's in town or whatever, but also
that's
then
a factor.
Yeah, so like there's
was
a lot
around the time Gus was here for his performance last year, or when the '96 team was here a year before that for their Legends Luncheon. So, if y'all know the Sun Devil Summits, they're a very good time. We've done several of those. There was a period of time where that was undefeated. and it's always undefeated in all our hearts.
Yeah.
So it's going to remain whatever and for the duration of eternity. But yeah, we're going to turn up a little bit, have a really good time. It's just been too long. Like I said, we used to do those events very regularly, at least once a football season, maybe even sometimes multiple times a year, depending on how things are rolling. So we're really excited to see you all out there. Again, we're going to be sharing a lot of information about that. We're going to have swag we're going to give away.
Free stuff.
Everybody who shows up is going to walk away with some Speak of the Devils swag. Might have some other goodies for you as well. It's going to be an awesome time. And, we're going to talk about the season. We're putting together our guest list, the VIP list. We're getting that sorted out. So there might be some secrets that will be disclosed over time. Maybe day of the show as well. We might just keep it completely hidden from y'all. I don't know. We're going to be a little mysterious here. But like I said, over and over again, come out, hang out with us. We'd love and truly appreciate your support. At the end of the day, it's going to be a blast. When all these Sun Devils get together for this good cause, it's a time to remember.
Absolutely. So, yeah, August 4th, 6 p.m., Graduate Hotel, Tempe, Arizona. Make sure you stick with us on the social media side of things. We'll get those handles out to you later. But, yeah, definitely a lot of cool stuff coming in. And, just another tease. That's like one of two major announcements that we have coming for you here pretty soon. So you stay locked in. All right, so let's dive into Sun Devil sports. As you mentioned, Joe, a lot to talk about. So talking first a little bit about baseball before we dedicate the rest of the show to football. The MLB Draft was just wrapped up today with the later rounds of the draft. A lot of Sun Devils got their names called, as to be expected. This is MLBU for a reason. I believe it's what? Alec Marsh was the 116th, 117th former Devil to make his
Sounds
debut.
like a good number to me. Yeah,
it's a lot.
My man Alec Marsh got in there for Kansas City not too long ago.
Yeah, and so the Royals are also got some Sun Devil love a little bit later on. But running down the 8 Sun Devils that got their names called during the draft, second baseman Luke Keeschel was the first Sun Devil off the board. Went pretty early, 49th overall in the second round to the Minnesota Twins. But no, the Twins were not done because they picked up pitcher Ross Dunn in the 10th round, 297th overall. The run of pitchers continued in the 11th round. The Pirates took Christian Curtis, 347th. The San Francisco Giants took Timmy Manning, so take good care of him. Jack Loader with the 360th pick. Pitcher Josh Hansel went in the 16th round to the Royals, 469th overall. Blake Pivaroff went 560th to the Detroit Tigers. Can join some torque.
Not to interrupt, apologize. I like how they had him listed as a third base. It's like if you're drafted by ASU, you got to be listed as a third baseman, because when Torque was picked first overall, they had him technically slotted as a third baseman. It's like, that was kind of weird because that threw off the possibility of like a superlative of a college first baseman being 1-1 overall. But I digress. It's just a weird little oddity.
Yeah, definitely. And so then we actually went back to a hitter, Wyatt Crenshaw, who had some good moments this past season. He went in the 19th round, and he's staying home, folks. He's a Valley kid. He is picked by the Diamondbacks with the 565th overall pick. Owen Stevenson, the pitcher, rounded out the proceedings. 573rd pick in the 19th round, went to Tampa Bay. So good class there. A lot of quality guys. Hopefully they have great success at the next level and continue to add to that 116, 117, whatever number that is. Continues to rack up a little bit. But Joe, there were some other notable draftees and some other guys kind of, the outside of that group that, are looking to move on to the major league level.
Yeah. First and foremost, if we're talking about ASU signing class for, the 2023 year, obviously for the 2024 season, as far as the high school signees are concerned, Ralphie Velasquez from Huntington Beach, that guy's a primetime elite recruit. It's one of those guys that you commit, you sign, but there really is never any expectation that these guys make it to campus. He was picked 23rd overall by Cleveland. To my knowledge, no other high school signees were picked as far as from the ones that are pledged to ASU. It's challenging to find all the information about these recruits. It's not quite as easy as logging on to the old rivals.com and seeing your basketball commits, your football commits. Sometimes it's a little challenge. So, I was wondering as far as just personnel and who might be gone from last year's lineup, who might never make it to campus, that sort of thing. The list there is pretty limited as far as the 2023 signees. There were some old faces for medium, I can't say long-time Sun Devil fans, because these guys, have only played college ball a few years, but those of you who've been paying attention to ASU baseball for a few years might remember some names like Hunter Haas and Jack Moss that played last year at Texas A&M, began their career as Sun Devils. They were both drafted, as was Graham Osman, who is now at Long Beach State. Brian Calmer, he went and made his way to Gonzaga. He was drafted as well. Cam McGee, younger brother of our guy, Brandon McGee, the entire McGee family. It's awesome, awesome people, Cam included. He played this past year at Washington State after transferring from ASU. He was selected as well. So, you've got a list of names, whether it's ones that came straight from Arizona State, ones that might have spent some time in Tempe, or ones that had intended to. Quite a few who were picked in the MLB draft. And you got some superlatives here, Brett. It's an interesting thing because the draft is kind of, different than it was in the past, like pre-COVID. You got your 20 rounds now. For maybe casual fans, 20 might seem like a ridiculous amount, especially if you compare that to, NBA or NFL, something like that. But that's actually way fewer than there used to be. So, there used to be 40, 50. Like, you look at some of these things from the old days, I think, you have picks that are literally thrown away. They're selecting.
Michael Vick got picked one year, like in the 40th round or something.
Yeah, and I mean, even this year, I don't think Ungalele, when was the last time he played?
High school.
Yeah, so you have guys, even now, that they're taking some flyers on. But some interesting superlatives about this. ASU with 8 selections, that's a big deal. I saw a number, and I think we can call it valid because it favors ASU, so why not? That I believe ASU tied for the 4th most selections of any college program, up there with the likes of LSU, had a pretty good year last year.
Pretty good. Stanford,
also pretty good year, and some others. So that's a big, big deal. As far as ASU standards, ASU history is concerned, so this overall amount of draftees ties for the most in the first 20 rounds since 1985 for ASU. I mean, think about that. Really good teams under Pat Murphy, really good teams under Brock. Didn't have that many players selected in the first 20 rounds of an MLB draft. 6 pitchers in the top 20 rounds. According to my research, that's the most ever for ASU. Really interesting thing when you consider the fact that pitching has not necessarily been the strong suit of this program for the last
rough couple years.
So you have some players, especially, a guy like a Josh Hansel, someone that had high pro upside, and it's paying off with the, draft selection there. Now, if you want to kind of narrow it down a little bit, folks might be saying, okay, 20 rounds, that's a lot of opportunity. Okay, let's narrow it down a little bit. ASU had 4 players drafted in the first 12 rounds. That ties for the second most since 2008, when 6 were taken in the first 12 rounds of that particular draft. Obviously, that was a really, really good time for ASU baseball, in the very late stages of Pat Murphy's tenure here. So however you want to slice it up, this was a really good draft for Arizona State. And so that's something that, again, you can say things like, oh, guys were taken in the very late rounds, or, well, if you had a ton of pitchers that were taken and, perhaps the pitching was not at the highest tier as far as the college game is concerned here in Tempe, what you can say positively is that's a good look for ASU. It's a real good look for Willie Bloomquist. That's something that you can recruit to, especially when you look at the list, see how many of these guys were transfers. Transfer portal obviously is going to be a huge deal in baseball, as it is in every sport. Again, this is a win across the board for me, something you can really promote as far as, emphasizing what your program can do as far as getting guys to the next level.
So hopefully the success in the MLB draft can parlay itself into some postseason appearances and success as this program under Willie Bloomquist continues to build up. But, some good numbers there. I mean, ASU has long been the pipeline to get to the major leagues. A lot of Devils are out there. So it'd be interesting to see how many these guys making in this 2023 class are able to make their debut and make their mark at the majors here. So hopefully they continue on an upward trend. It's kind of just, one of the first phases. Got some pro talent. Now you got to start stacking some wins and get into the postseason appearances and back to that Sun Devil standard. I know Sun Devil baseball fans are really eager to see.
And now on that same general topic, I know that the question remains, a lot of these players who were drafted still have college eligibility left. So the question becomes, okay, are they going to sign contracts and start their professional careers? Or are they going to possibly come back, play at Arizona State? I mean, you never know, because everybody values different things. Some people just want to move on with their careers. Some people make, very good financial arrangements. Obviously, you got a guy like a Luke Keishel coming in the second round. He's played his 1 year at Arizona State. Absolute best of luck to him. That guy's not coming back. Others may. It is very rare. I don't have the exact numbers, but I believe I did the research last year, more in relation to Ethan Long being, I believe, the very last pick in the draft.
Mr. Irrelevant, yeah.
About how frequent or infrequent is it that Sun Devils who are drafted come back if they have eligibility. I was only able to find a couple occasions in the last maybe 10 plus years or so, and that still includes players that were drafted in the 20, 30 plus round, area of the draft. So remains to be seen. It would be wonderful if some of these guys came back, especially the arms, to continue to try to improve the pitching quality of the program. If not, obviously all the best to them.
All right, so now turning our attention to football. Some news before we dive in to the recruits that ASU, or the verbals that ASU was able to get since we last joined you. On a related topic, though, because as we've seen, we've talked about at length, from last year to this year, Kenny Dillingham and staff have overhauled this roster. I mean, you're pushing 50 newcomers on this roster in terms of just the high school, junior college signees, transfer portal additions. They were able to do that because the initial counter cap that had been previously in place for a long time was waived. Obviously, there's a lot of new era of college football coming off the COVID. A lot of this roster management is been very difficult, very challenging, very intricate. But the initial counter wave has been crucial for the Sun Devils and along other schools. You look at Colorado, other schools that are bringing in more than just the typical 25 newcomers that for years schools could be limited to. Of course, ASU had that huge number in influx, was able to do in 1 year what probably might have taken 2, 3, maybe even 4 years in terms of working within that prior 25 player cap. The wave of that initial counter has been extended. So more good news for ASU and schools around the country, so they can exceed the 25 newcomers in future years. Obviously, in the transfer portal era, Joe, this is like a necessity, because obviously you want to have that lifeblood of just getting players into the prep ranks, but you need, especially a rebuilding team that is aiming to be on the way up like ASU, to get those guys that come in from the transfer portal, whether they have 1, 2, or multiple years left, to come in and make their mark and build that program, rather than just having to have a more deliberate process, especially in an age where coaches have such shorter leashes than they ever have before.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this news is crucial. To me, it's like a no-brainer. Between all of the factors, the transfer portal, people entering the draft, eligibility, the folks just finishing their careers, the number 25 just seems so minuscule. If you think that, like, if you couldn't exceed that, but with what I just mentioned, I mean, you're going to be losing a lot more than 25 players per year. So, I mean, you're operating at a deficit if you're expected only to limit it to no more than 25 players. So, again, that's a no-brainer kind of thing. I think they should just do away with it. I mean, what's the argument against it? That like an Alabama or a Georgia or USC is going to bring in 40 guys that are all top guys. I mean, yeah, that's a possibility, but also these guys are going to be intelligent and say, okay, I'm not going to be the third quarterback to sign with them this year as a high school recruit or something like that. I mean, they see the writing on the wall. So, I mean, I don't know what the danger is, the harm is, what the risk is in just having that counter deal not even be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this transfer portal NIL era, I think water eventually will find its level. It's starting to. I mean, I think there's a ways to go, but I think that you were starting to see things kind of mediate a little bit in terms of just finding kind of the more ebb and flow, and we'll see what kind of upcoming legislation in different states, or what the future of the NCAA, if they're ever going to get off their ass and do anything. We'll see, but I think things are starting to slowly, glacially maybe, kind of find their rhythm. So we'll see, but I think that in this transfer portal era has got to be is a necessity. I mean, teams need to be able to rebuild, and I think it engages more fan bases as well, because if you have a path to be better quicker, or less awful quicker, then that might help engage more teams across the country. But as part of that, obviously you're going to be bringing in a lot of high school kids, as ASU has been very active on the recruiting show. We mentioned off the top that relatively historically a slow part of the year, the ASU has been pretty good at getting some verbals. Obviously, the dynamic duo of Brian Carrington and Rashad Samples has been a big part of that. Since we last joined you on our last episode, 5 new commitments, bringing ASU's 2024 class total to 16, and that's 39th as of this recording in the Rivals recruiting rankings. Pretty good. Still ways to go, and there will be some movement as we kind of close out this part. We'll get to a little bit, but running down these 5 guys in kind of the order of the commitments, and you notice kind of a trend in these 5. Just the defensive backfield is being addressed. Cornerback Rodney Bimaj, a 3-star out of Dickinson, Texas. And again, more Texas guys, because he got that Carrington and Rashad Samples. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, I got a North Texas shirt on.
Texas shirt on. Texas forever. Hey, there you go. How about it?
Yeah, yeah. Like
we did not plan this.
You do the show long enough, 13 years, you start to like dress like, I guess. So Bamaj is obviously a very talented guy. He took an official visit to Kansas, had some other prominent Power 5 offers as well. 6 foot, 175 pounder. Then that was followed shortly thereafter by as we mentioned, the guy you hear from a little bit later at the end of the show, Plas Johnson, an athlete technically, but it looks like at ASU he'll start off at defensive back, even though he is a very accomplished receiver, over 1,000 yards for Chaparral a season ago. Another high 3-star prospect, 6'1", 165 pounder. Chose ASU over BYU and Kansas State. So it's another local commitment. Kenny Dillingham himself, a Chaparral alum. So they got that connection there. The lone offensive commitment during this span was tight end Jaden Fortier, a 3-star prospect, 6'5", 215 pounder from Oregon. And I think you'd like to see your tight ends have a basketball background, because this guy can hoop, great athleticism. And perhaps the thing that might most endear him initially to Sun Devil fans, chose the Devils over the University of Arizona.
One thing I noticed on that level, which made me smile, is looked at as I don't follow recruits until they make their decision. You know what I'm saying? And I saw his Instagram, after he had made this incredibly wise choice. And then at first, he had pictures or videos or reels or what have you of, different recruiting visits. That's cool. That's normal stuff. He had one of his visit to the U of A. And then I noticed shortly after he committed, he had removed that from his Instagram account. Now he had others, I think like Washington, maybe, other ones. That's fine. But there was one that was there before, not long after that was erased from existence.
He knows.
So he gets it. So that was, what? He's batting 1,000 in my book.
What was that Wildcat? Was Kadeem Carey? Was that the picture that would kind of circulate around Territorial Cup game week of him like on his ASU visit and like the ASU garb?
Yeah. He was wearing an ASU jersey for sure. Yeah, this is a different story, but I remember at that time there were a lot of folks that thought he was going to go to ASU. So yeah, that didn't happen, but ASU did all right.
All right, so rounding out the 5 commitments was linebacker Martell Hughes, another 3-star, 6'2", 195 pounder out of San Diego. And then one of the guys that really has gotten this class, really this coaching staff really fired up about his commitment, cornerback Plas Johnson II, a high 3-star and a 4-star, I believe, on 24/7. 6'1", 175 pounder from Texas, of course. The son of former NFL cornerback Plas Johnson, who had, I believe, a decade-long career. Played for the Ravens amongst other teams, but a quality player in his own right. So it runs in the family. Made his announcement, and that was a big. I think it's one of the 4th of July commitments that he had the Instagram live. So that was a guy that I know, like Ryan Carrington told him that he was number 1 on his board. A cornerback that has got a lot of folks in that Sun Devil building really excited.
Yeah, and a lot to break down about these guys. And you talk about recruiting rankings, things like that. Obviously, very subjective. It varies from site to site. And, I got to stick with the home team on rivals, things like that. But a few of these recruits, and also others that are already on the commit list, are like that 5.7. They put that numerical value, and that's like right on the fringe of being a 4-star. So as the season progresses, it's possible that some of these could be bumped up or down. But, ASU has a few guys that, you get them up to that 4-star caliber, and that makes the class as a whole. The difference between 3 and 4, at least as far as optics are concerned and the casual fan base is concerned, that's a pretty big deal. A lot of us will break it down a little bit, more molecularly as far as, okay, who are the guys that are offering them? Where are they from? Et cetera.
Right.
What schools do they play for? That sort of thing. But you got guys from San Diego, from Texas, from Oregon. Because, I believe that the tight end, there's at least one outlet that has him as the top player in the state of Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, not at his position overall. So, as long as he can keep these guys coming here, you always have levels of concern if an Oregon goes after him, or if somebody if USC goes after a guy from San Diego, if UT, whatever. Again, I'm not taking the negative attitude here to it, but it's been a big stretch of time. That's a big deal. This staff is really putting something special together in that regard, because you got to look at recruiting as just a larger pie than what we're used to. And I just hope, I don't understand why it hasn't been the case, and I hope something would change with the recruiting websites. Have it be the entire class of acquisition, because the high school and junior college recruits, that is not all that a incoming class of new players is for any program. Include the transfers. I'll get off my soapbox about that, but yeah, this crop looking good.
Yeah, and it might not, and there might be Another addition coming up here pretty soon, because on July 15th, a 3-star linebacker from the 2024 class, Sire Gaines of California, is going to make his college choice. ASU is in his top 6. Things are trending pretty well in that direction. So could be another addition to that Sun Devil defense with Sire Gaines on there. So as we mentioned, as it currently stands, 16 verbal commits, 39th in the rivals rankings. And as Joe alluded to, all these guys got another season of ball coming up at the prep ranks. So they put some good seasons together, show some more stuff. So you could see some movement on those rankings, get some more. So as of right now, Dylan Tapley and Tony Lewis and Kuba are the 2 4-star, quote unquote, blue chips of this class so far. But you could have a couple more, because this is a staff that is putting in the work and has the recruiting chops.
Yeah. And we're not even factoring in this season of football for ASU coming up. Obviously, we're talking about, for the high school recruits and that sort of thing. If ASU is able to make some advancements on the field and show that their product is matching, the hype, or the way that I'm sure that the coaches are hyping it to recruits, that adds up. I mean, we've seen it quite a bit where the first season of a head coach at ASU, we've seen quite a bit of success. There's actually kind of an interesting trend of the past handful of head coaches where they have year 1 success. Some didn't really do much after that, but hey, there are some that use that as a bit of a launching pad. So if ASU can show it on the field, that just helps more and more, and that would probably resonate no greater than the local recruits, because there are some top tier guys that are committed to some top tier schools, and if you want any chance of maybe swaying them to be that hometown hero, you got to get it done on the field. So we'll see how things progress in the coming months.
So the things are heating up on the 2024 recruiting trail, but right now, let's just maybe hop in the DeLorean a little bit, head into the future as we talk with ASU 2025 4-star quarterback commit, Michael Butter Tollefson. All right, let's start off with the big question. Why was Arizona State the right place for you to commit?
Ooh, I mean, a number of reasons, but, some of the big reasons were relationships, just, my relationship with Coach Baldwin, Coach Kenny Dillingham. It meant a lot. And then the fitness system. I really feel like the way that I play the game really fits the way that Coach Dillingham wants to play the game. And then another one, just the love that they showed me. They made me know that I was their number 1 guy. And when they show love to me, I show love to them. So I'm fully locked in, and a whole bunch of reasons, but those are the main ones.
So quarterbacks often are commit earlier in the cycle, perhaps other positions, but being the 2025 guy, why was now the right time?
I've been getting recruited for, a couple of years, a year or two now. And, in the process, there's a lot of fake love. There's a lot of love and a lot of fake love with it. I mean, I just feel like this process, this whole recruiting thing, it's a lot. And I kind of wanted to get it off my plate, be able to focus on football. And also just, I had a great feeling about Arizona State. I knew it was the place I wanted to be, just the relationship I had with Coach Dillingham. And, why wait it out? Why make it longer when you know where you want to be and just get it off your plate?
Kenny Dillingham's had obviously a great track record of developing quarterbacks throughout his still young career. But when you look back at the quarterbacks that have learned and played for Kenny over his various stops, what kind of things jump out about his track record as a developer of the position?
I mean, a ton of things. When Jordan Travis first went to FSU, from Louisville, no one really thought of him as a quarterback. They thought maybe, he should switch positions. But now look at him now, about to be a Heisman contender. Coach Dillingham really got the most out of him that he could. And then Bo Nix, again, he was at Auburn. He was highly recruited, but he didn't really do a lot at Auburn. Went to Oregon. People were like, what's going to happen with Coach Dillingham over there? And then you saw just a crazy year, massive numbers, Heisman contender last year. Going to be, just what he did with Bo Nix and Jordan Travis just speaks a lot of what he can do with an offense, and he's going to do it again at Arizona State. He's had success everywhere he's gone, and he's going to have success again.
Now, you've obviously visited Tempe, got to up close look at the program at Tempe, at the school. What things really kind of jumped out to you most when you got to see them in person during your visit?
Oh, just the culture there, it was great, even compared to some other spots, not to talk that, but it was a great culture. I talked to a lot of the kids. A lot of the players came up and talked to me. Some players were telling me how, there's a lot of transfers on the team, and they just said, transferring there, being there with the staff, not just Coach Dillingham, but the position coaches, just everyone around the facility, how it was really just the best decision of their life and how they're getting the most out of them. You know, the team's putting in the work, and they're gonna switch that whole thing around, making a winning culture and win games. That's the big goal.
Now, you obviously have one of the best nicknames out there that I've seen in a long time. Walk our listeners through the origin of the Butter nickname.
Oh, it's no crazy story. It's just from my mom. I was, a little tiny baby, and she started calling me Butter, and it's stuck with me my whole entire life. But everywhere, my teachers, my coaches, just everyone I talk to, I'm Butter now.
Good deal. You kind of staying back in the past a little bit. How did you first get into football and ultimately find your way to the quarterback position?
I mean, I learned to walk on a football field. My dad's been a football coach his whole entire life. So really just, while he's coaching, I was walking on the football field, growing up on the football field. I started playing tackle football when I was, 5 years old. So, I mean, I played other sports. I played football, basketball, baseball, ran track. I did a lot. But just football's always been my love. It's always just been like my whole family. Football's our thing.
You mentioned playing football when you're just a toddler, basically. Do you remember your first touchdown pass in the game?
Ooh, my first touchdown pass? I don't remember my first touchdown pass. I think I remember my first touchdown run. I definitely remember my first touchdown run.
Walk our listeners through. What do you remember? What's the play like? What was the play call?
Ooh, it was like I was probably like 6 playing 8U, and it was just like a halfback toss from like the 20, and I just ran in. I'm pretty sure that was my first one that I remember.
What's your favorite part of playing quarterback? The most important position on that field, and just a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. What really kind of sticks out why you love that position so much?
Oh yeah, I mean it's not the main position on the field, but it's the one most talked about. It's probably like the biggest one, highest paying, and it's just like being a competitor. Like at quarterback, you compete. Like every decision you make, when you run, when you pass, you impact the game every single play. So it's just that competitor in me wanting to go out there and just beat the opponent. And just I played every position, but quarterback, I started at quarterback, and then around like in middle school I was like, Dad, I want to go back to quarterback. So I mean, we've been grinding since 6th, 7th grade at quarterback, just trying to be the best we can be.
For any of the listeners out there who have not seen your tape or seen you in person play, give those folks a self-scouting report. What are the skill sets that you bring onto the field?
Self-scouting report? Well, I'm not just like a pro-style quarterback. I can kind of move on my feet too. I feel like I can make every throw around, and then I feel like I can improvise when need be. I'm a football player at heart. So, if the pocket's breaking down or I need to make something happen, I feel like that's a strength that I have just from playing football and watching a whole bunch of film, making things happen. I feel like I'm a straight out football player.
Obviously, you have a lot of tools in your skill set. Be able to throw and to run as well. You mentioned earlier that just kind of the offense that Kenny Dillingham and Bo Baldwin have really is attractive. What are some of the things that, from a quarterback's perspective, that really jumps out about their scheme and what they'd like to do schematically?
Everything that they do, it's based off the defense. They're just going to take exactly what the defense gives them. When you're in that QB meeting, there's a lot of responsibility on the quarterback. Quarterbacks can make a lot of calls, but it's nothing too complicated. Everything that you call is it's reactionary off what the defense does. And then, Coach Dillingham likes to pass the ball, so they're going to light it up through the air and take what they give them on the ground and light it up on the ground too.
A lot, what the quarterback typically commits earlier in the cycle. A lot of times you see those guys try to rally other recruits out there, kind of join them at their destination. Is that something that you see kind of yourself over the next year plus, of just kind of rally some other folks to join you in ASU's 2025 class?
Oh yeah, I've talked to a whole bunch of people. I've talked to a whole bunch of receivers, a couple of defensive players. The big guys. I've talked to Cooper Perry, Raiden Vinesbright, and then Dejon Hayden. Those are all players from the Phoenix area that Coach Dillingham made sure that we're trying to go get those guys. So I've been talking to them, trying to get them on board, and talked to a few players on defense too. So that's definitely a big thing for me.
You got a couple years left at the high school level before you don that maroon and gold. What are some of the things that you're looking to kind of elevate your game and show out there on the high school fields over these next couple of years before you get ready for college?
Oh, man, I transferred this year. I transferred over to J. Sarah Catholic, so, we played the best competition in the country, one of the hardest schedules. We play, top 100 ranked teams like 6 times this year, and I just want to show want to show people that I can go out there and be a winner, just win big games, be a competitor, and shock some people with the games that we win.
And looking at your future, a couple of years down the road, when you're in that maroon and gold and you're running out of Tillman Tunnel and Sun Devil Stadium, what are some of the things that kind of excite you the most, just generally, about getting the chance to play major college football?
Oh, it's always been a dream of mine. Just the energy, just the competitiveness. That's always a big thing with me. And I've been since I was 4 or 5 years old. I've been watching all the college football hype videos. I've just really lived my life to be out there on that field. So it's gonna be big for me. I'm gonna be excited.
All right, great stuff from ASU's future quarterback. But now, Joe, let's turn our attention this fall. The reason that this is the season 13 premiere, typically we start off with a rundown of the players that we figure are most crucial to the success of this upcoming year. And as we have done for most of the last several years, quarterbacks out of it. Because, obviously, the quarterback position is so crucial in the game. Putting Trenton Bourguet on there and his play is probably going to be self-explanatory. So let's kind of get that aside and kind of get really into the weeds a little bit and take our deep dive, because there's a lot of talent on this team. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of inexperienced guys. So, and a lot of opportunity, because while the national media, it seems like 3-9 is like the national refrain.
Yeah,
like they think that, I know it's
just kind of defaulting to a copy and paste, basically.
Yeah, but sorry that Kenny's not as flashy as Coach Prime or whatnot. But nevertheless, I think that there's a lot of talent here, but that's obviously no guarantee for success. So we're going to run down our individual list. We have not shared our respective 1 through 10s.
It's not a mutual thing. It's not an agreed upon thing. It's not a democracy where we're voting or anything like that. And one thing to keep in mind for those of you listening and watching is this is not a top 10 list of the best players. This is not that sort of thing. Now, obviously, there's a correlation there, but this is like the most important guys. This is the guys that, like, if this dude or these dudes on the list, if they go down, if they underperform, whatever the case may be, that has a drastic impact on this team as a whole, the season as a whole. And that's, of course, why we exclude quarterback, because if you take it in that context, that's going to be number 1 on your list every single year. So this allows us to create a little bit of suspense and variety in what we do.
Yeah, and so one of the things and what I compiling this year's list especially was like areas of dire need. And if you've been a listener to the show, what I think are the big areas there. And so you might have seen a lot of guys top of that list. And so before we dive into our reverse counting down from 10 to 1, some guys that just missed the cut. For me, I'm going to start off with right tackle Aaron Frost. Obviously, offensive line remains huge question mark. This guy was a multi-time All-Mountain West performer on his resume. However, he also has a lot of injury time on his resume. He has missed all of last season with injuries, but had some other injuries in his career. Missed all of spring ball, unfortunately, for ASU due to injury, but the expectation is he should be back. He's a very talented player. I think, he can be able to lock down that right side. And I think the expectation is that he needs to be, because we saw after him, Emmett Boley got some reps a season ago, but a guy with all Mountain West on his resume, pretty good. He looks the part. So, but I just don't have him at this point rising to one of the top 10 lists. But I think the offensive line is, you'll hear on my list, very important. Kicker Dario Longetto is another guy. Obviously, you're replacing all 3 specialists. I think it's going to be, a season where you can have some close games, and you're going to be needed to have a kicker that you can count on. It's a reunion with former Cal special teams coordinator Charlie Ragle, who's now at ASU. So Longetto's had some good success. He had a really strong spring, showed off a really good leg as well. So if he's going to be locked in as ASU's kicker, you need those points. ASU's had some ups and some downs recently in the kicking department. And for me, another position that's kind of just missed the cut is at safety. I have kind of like 2 guys that kind of neck and neck, Shamari Simmons and Xavier Alford. Obviously, Simmons was the guy that was an FCS transfer coming from Austin P. Alford is a guy that started his career at Texas, most recently at USC. Both I thought were really good in spring. Simmons especially. This guy isn't the biggest safety, isn't necessarily a Chris Edmonds type of body, but he hits hard. This is a guy who just really unloads on ball carriers. Also has a nose for the ball. Alford, his athleticism, his ball skills are very evident as well. The reason I don't have them quite there yet, even though this is going to be a 4-2-5 defense, we're going to have a lot of 3 safeties on the field a lot of the time. I think there's just a lot of quality depth. You have Edmonds coming back, Montana Warren, Jordan Clark has experience there as well. So there's going to be some other pieces there that I just, that at this point, I am just on the outside looking in.
So I'll generally agree with that list, with one exception that I won't disclose yet because that person is on my top 10. But the others, I'll agree there. I'll throw out a few others just for the sake of it. Xavier Guillory, he was really on the fringe for me. I just think there's some expected talent at that position. So that's one, again, just doesn't crack right in the top 10 for me. And I'll say linebackers, because there are a few ways that it could look. You've got a couple transfers. You got a guy like Will Schaefer, who's got a good amount of experience, some starting experience, but not a ton of it. Of course, losing Merlin Robertson, Kyle Soley, that's going to affect your defense. So that's why I wanted to select a linebacker, but I couldn't necessarily pick a particular one. So with my honorable mentions, to me, I can just lump in that whole group of like top tier linebacker possibilities.
All right, so here we go. Let's count it down, starting off from the bottom, working our way up to the most crucial of all the Sun Devils. Joe, who's your number 10?
My number 10, safety Chris Edmonds. So he's ASU's leading returning tackler. He had 50 tackles last year, led the team with 3 interceptions, showed some promise among, obviously what was a dreary season for ASU, especially defensively, came up from the FCS level. So you figure 1 season under his belt, that was a good one. This is someone that could really catapult to like an all-conference caliber, performance this season. You mentioned that you've got some talent, some newcomers at the safety positions. In the secondary, obviously a different look as far as the defensive, alignment is concerned. So there are some variables there where he's someone that I think needs to step up and be a leader in that secondary among those safety positions, so they can help usher in some of those newcomers, even though those guys have college experience or some, highly regarded recruits, that sort of thing. This is a season for me that I think that he can transition. Again, very good season last year, can transition into something very special. Again, if you flip it around and if he is hurt, if he underperforms, that takes, to me, a lot of quality away from that secondary.
I'm going to stay in the secondary with my pick for number 10 in the cornerback, Ro Torrance. I know that Cole Topham, multi-time guest on the show, is the president of his fan club, and for good reason. He was a really good cornerback in the Pac-12 a year ago. Unfortunately, missed 3 games, and I thought his presence was missed in those games that he was out. But he's a guy that was really just showed a knack for the ball. I mean, he's a 6'3", 6'4" cornerback, great ball skills, and I think he's really kind of taken that next step up after transferring over from Auburn. A guy that I think has true lockdown number 1 cornerback potential. And I think the secondary right now is going to need that number 1 type of guy. And I think that Torrance has all the skills there. He has a lot of new pieces in that secondary. You mentioned the safety spots as well, but also a lot of talent at cornerback as well. You're returning Ed Woods, Mason Williams as well. Isaiah Johnson's back in that mix. A lot of younger guys that could be potentially factors in there as well. But I do think that through it all, you need an elite that likes to throw the ball around. You look at some of the teams on ASU's schedule, that you're going to need a guy that can be able to kind of take that number 1 receiver off the chessboard. And I think that Ro Torrance, with his physicality, what we saw from him in spring, his fit in this new defense, and just everything seemed to come together for this guy to have a monster all-conference caliber year. Just got to stay healthy, get out there, and be that lockdown guy, take away a side of the field.
A theme that you heard from in my number 10 pick, the theme through the remainder of my picks, you're going to see like leadership experience being a high value. I think that's a big deal when you have a lot of roster turnover, when you have a new coaching staff, obviously a first-year head coach. So number 9 for me is a guy that's got 30 games under his belt at ASU. That's defensive lineman Anthony Cooper. Had a little cup of coffee in the transfer portal, right? But made his way back to ASU. There's no harm, no foul type situation. We've talked a lot about the defensive line and how there is going to be some concern until we see what goes on the field. Obviously, that was a problem area last year. So remains to be seen what we get out of Michael Matus as he's coming back from injury. A lot of new pieces. So Anthony Cooper on the field, he can perform for sure. We've seen some highlights out of him. And I think that his veteran presence, stability, reliability, those sort of things are going to be huge as well. So again, that's why he's in my top 10, because that's someone in a team like this, a season like this, situations like this, you need your experienced veteran players to step up in leadership roles on and off the field. And that's something I'm counting on him doing.
I'm also going to take a defensive leader on the side for my number 9 pick, but it's weirdly a newcomer, not a guy that's been around for a number of years. like Anthony Cooper, although it's not the last time you hear Cooper's name in this segment. Linebacker Trey Brown. Obviously, ASU lost a lot of their linebackers from a year ago, and Kyle Soley, Merlin Roberts, and Connor Soley. But that kind of doesn't matter. That defensive scheme, not great. In comes the 4-2-5 of defensive coordinator Brian Ward. AJ Cooper coming along with Ward from Wazoo to coach the linebackers. So this 4-2-5 scheme puts a lot on the linebackers. And you have Brown as a guy who's a veteran of many years in the Pac-12. He knows this defense inside and out. He's also a pretty good player. I mean, he wasn't a full-time starter, but has starting experience with the Cougs and has made some plays. And he looked really good in spring. And not only just did he look good on the field, leading that linebacker group on the defensive side, he was also helping them on the field because he knows his defense. And I'm talking to guys like Will Schaefer, Tate Romney, Crew Jackson. They all talked about how Brown was a valuable resource to learn this new defensive scheme, because this is a defense that's going to unload and unleash the aggression on the opposing offense. Something they're completely absent last year. So this is going to be a defense that gets after it, and it's going to be not just kind of the vanilla scheme we saw a year ago. It's going to be a lot of complicated stuff, and a lot's put on those two linebackers that are going to be in that middle of the defense. And a guy like Brown knows the defense inside and out, is a respected leader already in just a few months here in Tempe. That's why he's my number 9.
So switching from one line to the other, offensive line, we've had some questions over the last several months, and obviously we know, as it is pretty much every year, but extra important this year for the offensive line to be healthy, to be stable, to give ASU's offense a chance to operate. If that's not the case, then there'll be some dark days. So the first but not last offensive lineman that'll be on my list, number 8 for me, is Leif Fautanu, coming in from UNLV. Ben Scott transferred, of course, to Nebraska, occupied an interior line position that Fautanu is expected to fill as well. This guy has experience. He's had some all-conference caliber accolades. He's someone that needs to come in, especially at that center position, and be a stalwart on the offensive line. You look at these projected starting offensive linemen, including him, and these are guys that I mean, goodness, like, they got to stay healthy. They got to perform. You need to have that close-knit group for this season. Last year, obviously, there were some injuries that were dealt with, other matters. So him coming into the program, obviously, it's his first year at ASU. This will be my first of only 3 options, first newcomer that I'm going to be listing here on the top 10 list. But he's someone that, again, talent-wise, accomplishment-wise, could have an all-conference caliber season, or could be up there, with some of the better interior linemen in the conference, and ASU is really going to need that, again, as they operate this new offense from Kenny Dillingham and Bo Baldwin and all these skilled position players that ASU has, and they do have some to brag about. That's only going to go as far as the offensive line goes.
My number 8 is the exact same. Yes, Fautanu. He looked really good in spring. I mean, but a lot's going to be counted on this offensive line. This is an offense that schematically is pretty impressive, and it's kind of the quarterback is the point guard of this offense. A lot in most every play, he's got to get that ball out of it within 2.5 seconds. A lot of stuff are going to the short game. There's always going to be a hot read on a play, but you need an offensive line that can hold fast, open some lanes in the run game, but also keep your quarterback upright. And I think that we have a lot of questions about whether this offensive line can do that, because there's talent there, but there's also newcomers, guys coming off of injuries, some guys that need to kind of step up their game. But Fautanu has been a really solid presence in the Mountain West for a number of years. You mentioned Joe, an all-conference player, but you have questions at both in the guard spots. You have some newcomers that might come in and be able to fill those spots, or Joey Ramos coming off a season-ending injury. He locked down the right guard spot in spring, but you just wonder, guy who missed a complete total year, and even then, early in his career, was just kind of a spot starter, a swing guy at Iowa State. So there's some questions, but you have a guy in Fautanu who, at the Mountain West level, was really good, and if he can be the anchor of that interior of the offensive line, I think that can be a big step forward for the Sun Devil offense. That you don't need to hold your blocks forever, because again, a lot of these passing concepts, balls out in 2.5 seconds. So, but just be good enough, because you have a lot of weapons, and it would be a damn shame for the Sun Devils to not be able to kind of reach that potential, just because their offensive line struggled mightily. And I think if Fautanu can come in and build upon what he did in spring, lock down that center position for the Sun Devils, good things might happen for this offense.
So my number 7 is going to be a guy that Brad mentioned just a moment ago, Ro Torrance. All the potential in the world, showed quite a bit of flash last year. Again, this is a season that I expect him to take a major leap talent-wise. You look across this conference, you've got a lot of good quarterbacks. You've got the Heisman Trophy winner. You've got some others, ones that transferred in, ones that are returning. We still don't know what ASU is going to bring as far as pass rush, though I know they're going to put a lot of effort into it, a heck of a lot more than we saw last year. That's for sure. But until that sort of material is put together, really puts an emphasis on a guy like Ro Torrance in the secondary to be able to do whatever it takes to shut down that top receiver for the other teams. Because again, there are some good ones across the conference. So that's going to be, a big, big deal. This guy's got massive NFL potential, could be after this season. So again, he's someone that I look at, like we talked about, a lot of new pieces in the secondary, some intriguing talent when you have guys that are returning to the program from the previous year. Again, that's something that they can build on what they've already done here, provide some leadership, and a guy that has all the talent in the world, great frame, like far surpassing what the typical frame is for a cornerback. Expecting a big year out of him, and ASU is going to need it.
All right, number 7 on my list is going to be going back to kind of the need base, because I have serious questions for ASU on both lines. Talked about the offensive line last. Right now, we're going to the interior of the defensive line. Defensive tackle, I think, is going to be a big determining factor in terms of whether this defense is able to play up to potential. If ASU is able to make a run at a bowl. They had a lot of defections in the middle of that defensive line. They did make some additions, missed out on a few guys that they were really hoping to bring in through the transfer portal. But one guy that they did secure, I think, is going to play a major role, and that's Deshaun Mallory. He played 27 games for Michigan State, so he has experience in the Big Ten. But 44 tackles, 5 tackles for loss over the course of his career. 6'3", 280 pounds. Has some ability to play some defensive end, slide outside. He's about 280 pounds. But I think he really needs to be able to help anchor that middle of the defensive line. That's a huge need for the Sun Devils. We saw what happened last year. They got run over. And I think this defensive scheme from, just schematically is going to have an improvement, but you also need the dudes in there in the trenches to be able to have that physicality to not get run over for, 200 yards against the Wildcats, as we saw a year ago. I think that, another guy on my list that will be coming up here could really help and team with Mallory to help solidify the middle of that defensive line. It's going to be a major area of focus for me. And I think for your fans, if this team's going to make that run for a bowl, if it's going to be a successful first year under Kenny Dillingham, one of those things that needs to happen is they got to be a lot better than they were on the interior of the defensive line. And I think that Mallory has the ability, but we'll see if he's got to do it. I mean, a lot's going to be falling on his broad shoulders.
Moving on to number 6. Now, if we were just breaking down a list of the most talented players on the roster, this guy would probably be number 1 or 2, but he plays at a position group that has improved, at least on paper, dramatically over the course of this past offseason. So we're talking about Elijah Badger here, number 6. This is a guy that made a big leap last year, big time leap. It almost feels like a very distant memory when we were kind of gritting our teeth, wondering like, all right, is this guy gonna pan out? He came here, the 2020 COVID season wasn't really playing. 2021 was used a fair amount. Last year really broke out. So obviously the next step for him is like 1,000-yard season, right, before he gets off to the NFL. So again, having him at 6 and not higher than that is a compliment to the wide receiver group that could have quite a few pieces of it that could be quite dangerous. But Badgers, your unquestioned wide receiver number 1. There are a lot of guys that ASU's quarterbacks can spread the ball out to, but he is going to be that that game breaker. We saw the different ways that he can be used. Just a tremendous athlete with limitless potential. So again, if anything compromises his 2023 season, that's going to be a huge knock against ASU's offense as a whole. If he puts in the work, like I said, this is a guy that the next step for him is like 1,000-yard season and getting into a really impressive NFL draft slot position.
So if your number 6 ranking for Badger is a real compliment to the wide receiver room, I must be over the moon for the wide receiver groups. I don't have them on my list. But I do also have a wide receiver at number 6 because everything Joe said, I think, is spot on. I think Badger is primed to have a massive year. We saw the flash, the potential, the big catches all season long. And I think, this guy can be 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 yard type of guy. But I think in order for that to happen, you need a viable alternative to keep defenses honest on the other side, keep those guys busy and on the outside, and wide receiver Xavier Guillory, the Idaho State transfer, I think can be that guy. Massive, huge showing in spring, and this is a guy who can catch and run, be a deep threat, but also a guy who can take the yards after the catch, to take those quick passes from this Kenny Dillingham scheme and makes guys miss and then get into that open field. This guy has good size too, good physicality as well. I just think that you definitely need that number 2 option. I mean, we'll talk perhaps about, what's going on in the middle of the field in terms of receiving threats, but I think you need to keep opposing defenses honest on the outside of the field. I think Badger's good enough. He's an all conference caliber type of guy. He's going to get his, but if Guillory can be a guy that on the opposite side of the field can keep defenses honest, then Badger's ceiling just increases, several times over.
So we're past the halfway point, and it seems like this is where we're getting a little weird with it, because my number 6 wasn't even on Brad's list. My number 5, I know, is not on his list because he already mentioned this guy. A little spoiler alert I was giving you about the one that was on his honorable mentions that was in my list. That dude is at number 5. That's Dario Longetto, ASU's place kicker. This could be a very big deal. Of course, he comes to ASU from Cal. Folks who look at the surface, look at some of the numbers, you might be a little lukewarm on what this dude can do at this level. Killed it in the spring, from what I told.
He looked
very
good.
Looked very good. He is yet another disciple of my man Steve Roush, Dobson Mustang, Arizona State Sun Devil, great dude. So if he gets he's got the Midas touch, right? So
you can't play special teams at ASU without the Roush touch.
So this is someone, again, pivotal player for what ASU is looking to do this year. There's just so many possibilities for his team as a whole, for the offense as a whole. You don't know if it's going to be high scoring. You don't know if it's going to have some difficulty in moving the ball, scoring points. So we have seen over the last, less than 10 years, the significant difference between having a very reliable place kicker and having very erratic place kicking. Having kickers where you feel like they could make just about anything in the stadium, to a kicker where anything that's 40 yards or beyond just seems like it's never going to happen. I mean, we've seen some, not going to call guys out by name, but I can think of a few like individual kicks that I remember seeing the last couple of seasons. Like, why are they even trying this? And I'm not saying it was like a 65-yarder or something like that. So, Longetto, that's going to be just a huge piece because, again, if he doesn't perform, then you don't really have much behind him. Yes, you lost 2 kickers to the transfer portal, right? So he's going to be called upon, you would imagine, quite a bit. And so if he can be consistent, if he can take a positive effort in the spring, translate that into this season on the field. Again, I'm not necessarily saying or expecting him to be the next Zane Gonzalez and be automatic from 55 to 60 yards and things like that. But if he's someone that can give you confidence in his ability to put points on the board and not be a liability, that's going to be a big thing. But that's why he's here on my list, right in the middle of the list, because we still don't know. So that's going to be, a big deal this fall.
Any offense with Kenny Dillingham or Bo Baldwin at the helm is going to throw the ball an awful lot, but they're also going to run. You just look at Oregon last year; they had 2 backs that ran for over 750 yards, and so this is an offense that's going to run the ball a lot as well. The running backs are also going to be a big factor in the passing game. In spring, we saw the running backs catch a ton of balls. But you look at what ASU returns at running back. Now, we talked a bunch of our shows over the last couple years about how under Herm, he likes to run one back a lot. I mean, obviously Rashad White, last year, ex-Valaday. But this seems like it might be a staff that likes to distribute the workload a little bit more evenly. But you still need a guy to keep defenses honest, a guy that can be a workhorse for you. And I think that Cam Scatabo is that guy. In spring ball, he was absolutely terrific. If anybody who went to the spring game saw, he was an absolute terror for opposing defenses. A physical runner, continues to every practice during spring. He had at least 1 or 2 runs that reminded me of DeMario Richard, just like that bowling ball that just tackling him looks like the most miserable experience you can possibly have. A massively productive guy at the FCS level last year at Sacramento State. He's runs very violently, can catch a ball. I've tweeted a bunch of times that I would be stunned if this is a guy who doesn't end the season with like double-digit touchdowns. because I think he's going to be a prime goal line back. There's talent there. Tevin White showed some flashes in the U of A game a season ago, and he's very talented coming in, former 4-star recruit. You have DeCarlos Brooks as well. The Cal transfer, he looked really good in spring, caught a lot of passes. Javen Jacobs moved over from wide receiver to running back, and he can be an electric kind of scat back type. George Hart as well in that room. But I think Scatabo is going to be the guy that a lot of ASU fans are really going to fall in love with in terms of what he's able to do for this offense that is going to run the ball a lot, but also I think he's going to be a big factor in the passing game as well.
So moving on, number 4, again, like I was talking about with Badger, if this were a list of just the most talented players, this guy would probably be number 1 without any sort of argument from anybody involved. Someone that broke out like crazy at the end of last year. The statistics he put up in the final half of the season last year, absolutely through the roof, and are as good as anybody at his position, really in the history of ASU in terms of what he did productivity-wise over a few game stretch. Of course, it's Jalen Conyers. Really, we talked about how for Elijah Badger, opportunity to step up. Chris Edmonds, an opportunity to step up from, doing very, very good things to, top-tier things. Conyers is someone that, you really can't put any limits on his potential and what he could do this year. It is not out of the realm of possibility that he could set single season records by a tight end at ASU. Those things are attainable. Getting it, especially the position he plays and how he plays it. This guy could be a, quote unquote day 1 NFL draft pick. This guy could be a first round draft pick. He really cannot, again, you can't put any clamps on the potential that he has. So he is going to be a huge focal point. Now, obviously, the tight end group as a whole has a few guys they're going to target. And that's probably part of the reason why, not that, number 4 is a shabby position for him, but I didn't have him like number 1 or 2 because there's some talent that surrounds him at his position group and elsewhere on the offense. But yet again, this is someone that shouldn't shock anybody. Maybe if he leads a team like in receptions, that sort of thing, because if he can just take what he did at the end of last year and he's a known commodity now, this guy's not going to surprise anybody, but you have a full off season of him being the guy, which he is, man, it could be something special, and it needs to be because he's going to be that focal point. So ASU is going to target him a lot, so that the performance needs to match the attention that he's going to receive, both from his team. And again, he's going to be the focal point of just about every defense that ASU plays. So big season in store for Jalen Conyers, and the Sun Devils are going to need that.
All right, moving on to number 4, going back to the trenches on the interior defensive line. And it's a name that Joe mentioned a little bit earlier, Anthony Cooper. He's moving over from defensive end, now moving inside to 3 tech. We talked about ad nauseum about how important the play and the interior of the defensive line is going to be for the Sun Devil defense as well, because they've had some pretty effective edge play during the spring, and it looks like they got a good situation out there. They can lock down the middle, and I think Cooper, with his veteran presence, his ability, and what we saw some flashes from him in spring, is able to do. He has that veteran presence that can help off the field as well. You have Deshaun Mallory, of course, playing the nose a little bit. Then you have Tristan Monday, freshman phenom, CJ Fight in that mix as well. But Cooper is going to be a guy that's going to be counted on to be a stalwart on that interior of the defensive line. It's going to be a real crucial position for him. He's just got to kind of step up. I mean, this is a time. He's been a pretty good player to have, had some moments, but he needs to take that next step up into a difference maker for the Sun Devil defense, or else it could be another season of pretty shaky times that when the other team has the ball. But if he's able to kind of step up and reach his potential, his running mate to also at nose, Deshaun Mallory, I think they have some pretty good intriguing potential. But I think Cooper, especially playing that 3 tech spot with his ability, his pass rush skills, moving over from end, I think lots going to fall on his plate. So it's going to be time to see if he's ready to eat.
Similar type of narrative, because talking about the same general position group, different player. If you look back, since Kenny Dillingham was hired last November, a lot of important acquisitions by way of like high school and junior college signees. Of course, a lot of inbound D1 and FCS transfers that are going to be important. But if you look back on all the talent acquisition, if you want to call it that ASU has done over the last, 6, 7, 8 months, one of the biggest ones will be a guy that they got back out of the transfer portal who had thought about leaving Arizona State. That's BJ Green, someone that has shown an incredible amount of flash, ability to get to the quarterback in his first couple seasons at Arizona State. And, the things that we were hearing out of spring ball and just the talent that he has really give you the impression that he is primed for a major breakout season. And of anybody that is on this roster that's proven they can get to the quarterback, obviously that is a general statistical category that ASU needs to improve dramatically. He's someone that can do that, brings a lot of energy to this team. Yet again, a leadership quality that needs to be there. He's someone that, and this happens all the time, of course, with college sports. It's like in the blink of an eye. You remember him as being this true freshman walk-on that was doing some cool things. Like, all right, who in the world is this guy? And now, fast forward a couple of years that have passed very, very quickly, he's one of the elder statesmen on the defensive line. So between his talent and the leadership that he needs to bring, very integral player for this entire defense.
My number 3 is a guy Joe just talked about a little bit ago. Jalen Conyers, absolutely ridiculous second half of the 2022 season when, weirdly enough, the offense decided, hey, throw to our super talented tight end and good things will happen. And they really much, they did. So yeah, I'd almost be stunned at this point if he doesn't break Chris Coyle's records for single season tight end production. I think those are some things that are well within Conyers' reach. And we saw the dominance over the last 5-6 games last season, but being there in spring practices and watching all those 15 sessions, Conyers took it to a whole nother level. Every practice there was like a holy F type of moment of what he was able to put forth. Some of the catches, there was a play in a red zone drill where Ro Torrance was in absolutely perfect coverage, but Conyers just kind of like stuck out one hand while being draped and just made it look the most casual thing possible. But just like, he was just dialed into a whole nother level. So I think that this is a guy that is supremely talented. Obviously, he was a 4-star recruit, and then transferred over to ASU and put forth the tantalizing back half of the year. This is going to be an offense that features a tight end. The Oregon tight ends had over 10 combined touchdown receptions a year ago. We've talked about, I don't know how many years, Joe, have we talked about this is going to be the year the tight ends back. This is
all
going to
of
be
them.
Yeah, all of them. This, if it doesn't happen this year, when you have Jalen Conyers in this offensive scheme, besides Swinson, who looked really good in spring too, Bryce Pierre, I thought took major strides forward, and he could be like the dude at the position in 2024 for the Devils. But Conyers obviously is the headliner here. He's going to be a guy that I think is going to be, if he's not an all-conference caliber or not on the all-conference team, something went wrong. Perhaps he got dinged up a little bit, but if he's healthy, he is going to put forth some ridiculous numbers. And this is something that an offense that needs, because you have Badger on one boundary. You have, as I talked about a moment ago, Guillory, if he can do his things out there, you keep those defenses honest and on the outside, and you got Conyers and Swinson Pierre running the muck in the middle. That's really hard to defend. So if Conyers can able to just stay on the field right there, he's going to do good things. It's just a matter of to what degree, and can he take that next step to great.
So we're into the top 2. So the runner-up, silver medalist, whatever you want to call it. So this is, prime elite category. I'm going to give you a real hot take here, Brad. It is important to protect the quarterback in the game of American football.
Cite your sources on that.
My brain. To do that, you want your offensive line to do well, to be talented, especially at the offensive tackle positions. I'm not favoring one over the other. I'm just saying that quarterback protection, giving the quarterback enough time to operate, though, as you've mentioned, this is going to be a fast-paced offense. They're not going to be hanging around in the pocket doing their taxes all day long. But the offensive line, like I've said, you need stability. You need guys to take steps of progression. You need to have your projected starters stay in the lineup and be the guys that you expect them to be. Someone that has had some intrigue since he arrived on campus, someone who's gotten some experience under his belt. Again, we're talking about a year where players can advance from one level of capability to another. We already mentioned some earlier in this list that are already at a very good level, and they're looking to break through to that elite level. The guy that I think is kind of nipping on the heels and ready to break into a higher category, that's Isaiah Glass. Playing offensive tackle for ASU, it's just going to be critical that he performs at a high level so that this offense can operate as Kenny Dillingham and Bo Baldwin want it to operate. On the contrary, if he does not do his job, or if the offensive line as a whole doesn't do its job, that throws a lot of things into dysfunction. So this is someone that, again, critical that Isaiah Glass has a very good year. Tempted to put him number 1, put him number 2, but this is a guy that he has the ability. He's got the chops for it. Don't get me wrong, but it would be a wonderful thing to see him, in that conversation for all conference caliber honors at the end of the season. That'll mean that ASU's offensive line had some stability over the course of the year.
I mean, whoever could put Glass at number 1. We'll find out. Number 2 is a guy that Joe talked about also, BJ Green. Cam Scatterbo had a great spring. Jalen Conyers had a great spring. Clayton Smith, the transfer from Oklahoma, had a great spring. Nobody had a better spring for the Sun Devils than BJ Green. Moving from that defensive tackle spot where he had his first 2 years, where he was obviously came in as a walk-on true freshman and led the team with 5 sacks in 2021. Last year, tied for the team lead. Now it was obviously a tough pass rushing year for the team as a whole. Just 2.5 sacks, still good enough for the team lead. He had 2.5 sacks by like the first water break of most of these spring practices. This dude put together a monster spring sessions. And they moved him to outside, and just the pass rushing moves, his speed. Now he's always a little undersized guy, but he's able to use kind of those quickness things like kind of Will Sutton mold his first couple years. But he just looked unblockable at times, making life hell for the Sun Devil offense. They're trying to put in together their new scheme, but he was just so good. And he also has that versatility, of course, having played a couple years on the inside, that he could move in and to play one of the defensive tackle spots. And it's something that Brian Ward even talked about, that sometimes that they might roll 4 edges out there as the defensive line. But BJ Green has the ability to be one of those rare double-digit sack type of guys. We haven't seen that at ASU for quite a while, and he has that ability. And I think if you're able to have that very disruptive presence, I mean, if he's game in, game out this fall, as disruptive as he was during spring, 30 or 75% of what he was in spring practice, man, it's going to be something really good. And that's just going to open things up for the rest of the defense. There's a lot of good edge rushers out there. Prince Dorba coming over from Texas, mentioned Clayton Smith, who had some good moments as well. And Michael Matus is perhaps more in that run stuff mold as well. But if you can get a guy like BJ Green just humming along at that elite level, I mean, he's put in a lot of hard work. He's a really smart guy. The guy's studying robotics. He's a robotics engineer. I mean, he's an incredibly smart dude, and he's putting the mental side with the physical side to be an absolutely disruptive force for the Sun Devil defense. Now, if he can do that on a consistent basis this fall, this Sun Devil defense is not just going to take a couple steps forward. It can take a massive leap forward from what we saw a year ago.
So we're here. We're at the top of the list. This thing is breezing by. So, I was debating who I wanted for number 1. Looking back at it, it's interesting, the run game for ASU. I remember a time, the early part of this century, it was kind of rare for ASU to have a 1,000-yard rusher. You had a few seasons, whether it was kind of by choice or a lack of top-tier talent or injuries, that they would shuffle through depth in a particular season at running back. But man, if you look at the last decade, with the exception of the COVID season, it's only been 1 year that ASU hasn't had a 1,000-yard rusher, and that was 2016, which was kind of a forgettable season. And that spans across, obviously, a few coaching staffs, a few running backs: DJ Foster, Demario Richard, Eno Benjamin, Rashad White, most recently, of course, ex-Valaday. We've just seen the running back be such a critical component. I'd have to guess that in that period of time, so the majority of the time that we've been doing the show, our season MVP or offensive player of the year has probably been a running back on a handful of occasions.
Yeah, I mean, there Eno, Rashad,
just
was
my
last
gut
year.
telling me
Yeah,
that, you know what I'm saying? So now, obviously, those are different times, different players, different coaches, different offenses. As Brad mentioned, that could be something where there's more depth as far as the running back position is concerned. Oh yeah, if I haven't said who my number 1 is, it's Cameron Scatterbo. You see what he did at the FCS level at Sacramento State. Very enticing. Can he do that at this particular level? As Brad mentioned, this dude was just a ball of fire in the spring. And he's got something about him, the swagger about him. I saw videos recently when they were doing some summer workouts. He's power cleaning 375 pounds. I lift a lot of weights. If I tried to power clean 375 pounds, I would break, rupture, tear, hurt every single bone, muscle, piece of cartilage in my body, and all of my soul as well. It is quite an achievement for a guy that, we're not talking about a Brandon Jacobs style running back. This guy is just a bowling ball. Someone that I think the fans are really going to get behind, as you talked about. He runs with aggression, kind of gives you that little bit of DeMario Richard, which is, an all-timer in my book. So that's going to be critical. He has the ability to play a very, very important role in this offense. When you have the pass catching threats that ASU has in the established players of Elijah Badger, Jalen Conyers, ones like Guillory and Swinson and Pierre, and some of the other receivers that may not be as established but can get the job done. If you've got those guys getting things done, there could be a lot of running room for Scatterbo. He could also catch the ball out of the backfield. So I think he is primed for a very intriguing year. Can he get to that 1,000-yard or more mark? It's certainly on the table for him. And then again, in these circumstances, when we're talking about the players that are right at the top of this sort of list of importance, I think about, okay, what happens if they do the things that you expect them to do and hope for them to do? What does that do to your team? He provides stability and versatility for this offense. Now then, if, let's just say hypothetically, devil's advocate, if the leap to the FBS level, a little bit much for him, if he's not able to perform at the level that he did at Sacramento State, then that puts you in a position where you have to divide the carries a little bit more. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but that might take you out of your typical game plan as far as just having more of a platoon. As Brad talked about, probably going to see a little bit more spreading the love than we saw under Herm Edwards. I don't know if it's possible to do any less. I think guys got maybe a carry before, and
Or Daniel and Gata
500 or 600 or something like that. But Cam Scatterbo, between the importance that he has and the intrigue, I'm just really, really, and we've been talking about this pretty much all offseason, really intrigued to see how we look back at this 2023 season for him and what that's all about. Because like I said, there's a very, very high ceiling in what he can do. And if he does that, people are going to be real fired up. This just strikes me as a guy that's got like fan favorite written all over him. Just got to go out and get the job done.
My number one, previously mentioned by Joe, it's his number two, left tackle Isaiah Glass. Now, obviously, we've talked about ad nauseum. Offensive line remains a major question mark. There's going to be guys that are new to Tempe, that are coming off of injury, that are perhaps becoming a full-time starter for the first time in their collegiate careers. But Glass was holding down that left tackle spot last year. Had some ups, had some downs, as the kind of offense did as a whole. But with so many weapons on this offense for the Sun Devils, and you just need some decent line play to just kind of get to uncork some of those on the opposing defense. You got, as we mentioned, you have a Badger, you have a Guillory, you have your tight ends, you have a talented group of backs, you have a trigger man probably in Trenton Bourget or even Drew Pine that have experience at this level. But if you can't get anything going, if you can't win the battles in the trenches, and if you can't keep your quarterback's blind side clear, you're going to have a rough go. And I think Glass has been dialed in a little bit, and he's had a pretty solid spring, but I want to see him take that next step up. And I think he has the ability to do so. He's going to be out there, getting those reps with the ones. And the one thing to monitor, I mean, obviously ASU brought in Bram Walden, the former 4-star offensive lineman, a local guy, went up to Oregon. Now he's back in Tempe. Walden was dinged up a little bit in spring, so didn't get as many reps as he would have hoped. But perhaps that's, a young guy kind of nipping at his heels a little bit might help, the iron sharpens iron with Glass in terms of being able to take that next step and become a good Pac-12, perhaps an all-conference caliber left tackle. There's so many weapons on this offense, and we saw so many different wrinkles. And with Bo Baldwin's experience calling very effective offenses, what Kenny Dillingham has already put on his young career's resume, very tantalizing. But you need to win at the point of attack. You need a decent offensive line at minimum. And ASU had some big-time struggles in that area a season ago, but I think you add in the local element there. Glass from Queen Creek. This whole thing is about activating the Valley. He's, very active on social media, very positive, trying to rally folks around. So if you can have a hometown guy at your left tackle, perhaps a homegrown, Marana, it was in the state, in that
Tucson.
Yeah, see, Tucson. As they're very, they'll make that point of clarification. Bourget, homegrown quarterback, other homegrown pieces as well. That just fits overall narrative, and a lot of, if you can get all those elements coming together, you get good offensive play. You get good offensive play from local guys. Man, That's like the Kenny Dillingham like dream right there. So I think all eyes are going to be on Isaiah Glass. Lock down that left side, young man. Let this offense flourish, and I think that they have the weapons in their arsenal to do some damage in the pack this year. All right, so before we kind of close out and talk to Plas Johnson, the most recent commit from Chaparral High School for the Sun Devils, let's do kind of a quick review of our top 10 lists. I'll start it off just kind of going down 1 to 10 this time. Number 1 on the list, left tackle Isaiah Glass, then edge BJ Green, tight end Jalen Conyers, 3 tech Anthony Cooper, running back Cam Scatabo is my number 5.
Scam Catabo. Is that like that's his bizarro version that's got like a mustache or something like that?
He's got some multi-level marketing opportunities he wants to discuss with you.
I don't even know what to say to
that. Number 6, wide receiver Xavier Guillory. Nose tackle Deshaun Mallory is my number 7. Center Leaf Fatano at number 8. Linebacker Trey Brown 9. And rounding out my list at number 10, cornerback Ro Torrance.
I'm going to start mine with some enunciation of Cam Scatabo. Number 1 for me, running back. Number 2, offensive lineman Isaiah Glass. Number 3, defensive lineman BJ Green. Number 4, tight end Jalen Conyers. Number 5, kicker Dario Longhetto. Number 6, wide receiver Elijah Badger. 7, defensive back Ro Torrance. 8, offensive lineman Lee Faltanu. 9, defensive lineman Anthony Cooper. And number 10, defensive back Chris Edmonds.
All right, so those are our lists. We'd like to hear from you folks out there. Who do you think are going to be the most crucial non-quarterback Sun Devils for this upcoming year? You can hit us up on social media. Throw out our list. Tell us why we're very smart and correct in our order, or why we're very bad and don't know what we're talking about, because your lists are reign supreme in any event. Right now, we're going to be talking to a conversation I had with the 3-star athlete commit out of Chaparral High School, a local guy joining the ranks of ASU's 2024 class, Plas Johnson.
All right, so let's start off with the big question. Obviously, a number of schools were vying for you and as the place to continue your football career. But ultimately, why was ASU the right fit for you?
I just really believe the coaches with how they're going to develop me as a person and an athlete. And I just really like the people there, the community of it.
You had recently taken an official visit to ASU in Tempe and gotten to know the Sun Devil football program up close. On that visit, what were some of the things that really kind of jumped out to you the most, that really impressed you?
Once I really got to see like the coaches' work ethic and how they like talk to each other and how close everyone really is, rather than like just it being for a job, but they're actually like really a family though.
Yeah, obviously a big part of that obviously is Kenny Dillingham, your future head coach, and you guys obviously have the connection of just kind of both being Chaparral guys. What were some of the things that kind of jumped out about Kenny Dillingham, as a head coach and as the program that he's trying to shape and mold?
He's a really cool guy. When it's time to like lock in and stuff, he knows how to do that. He's a really easy like head coach to talk to. He seems like a great head coach and someone I could trust with my career going further.
How cool is it that you guys, obviously have that Chaparral connection, just kind of, in both being local Arizona guys?
It's pretty cool. It's like a little bonus.
Obviously, one of the guys that was very critical in your recruitment, your future position coach, Brian Carrington, developed a reputation as one of the best recruiters in the nation. What were some of the things that really jumped out to you about what makes him an effective recruiter, and also, as a guy that you want to play for?
He's a completely truthful dude. Everything he tries to tell you, he tries to back it up to make sure that, he's telling the truth. Especially when I got, time alone with them. And then it really seemed like he knew what he was doing outside of just recruiting. He knows what to do with corners and how to develop them. And I trust him because he's been at over mostly all the levels. So he's somebody I could trust, really.
Since getting in Tempe, Kenny Dillingham's really trying to put a renewed focus on the local football talent here. A lot of the local players that kind of might have been overlooked by ASU in prior years. How do you, as one of the top local players, how do you think that this new staff and culture at ASU is this kind of new era of Sun Devil football is being viewed by kind of local players as a whole?
definitely would be better than before with recruiting. And I trust the other coaches with the recruiting too, because they're not really into the 3, 4, 5 stars a whole lot. They're really just into like if the athletes like has the same abilities and same stuff as a 4 or 5 star, but it could only be a 2-star, 3-star, like unranked.
Obviously, as a local guy, that proverbial title of the hometown hero. You've seen guys over the years like DJ Foster, N'Keal Harry, Chase Lucas, for example. It's kind of continue to stay home, play for ASU, and develop into a beloved star. How much appeal does that that quote unquote hometown hero potential hold for you?
Being a hometown hero or staying in AZ wasn't a whole big deal to me. I didn't really let that choose or decide where I went, but I don't know, it's just definitely something, I have, I might have to probably do that to carry, the name and, start getting busy. So.
Is it cool for you though that you get to stay home and your friends and family can stay in town and watch a ball out as a Sun Devil?
Yeah, for sure.
You're a guy that has had great success, playing both sides of the ball so far in high school, coming off a monster 1,000-yard receiving season. Give our listeners, a scouting report on what skills and what you bring to the field, both on offense and perhaps in your future home on the defensive side of the ball.
For receiver, I think it kind of carries over to defense pretty well, but offense is catching the ball, route running. And then it kind of comes over to defense where I get ball hawking skills, and then on top of that, I'm able to stay on my guy. I'm able to cheat routes, use my hands, but I'm still learning my technique, still learning everything. So,
yeah, as you mentioned, of course, most of your time has been seemingly spent on the offensive side of the ball, but making that switch over to defense. What's some of the skills and things that you think that you have in your skill set that fit well for the defensive back positions?
Definitely the ball hogging skills, the route combinations, jumping routes, good low amount of stuff, helpful stuff.
What are you most looking forward to about down the road becoming a Sun Devil, running out through Tillman Tunnel in that maroon and gold?
Sure, just really getting to be able to play, and I finally actually, since I was a little kid, you see it kids, the players coming out the tunnel and stuff, and I used to be in the stadium, so it's kind of a cool thing to think about. But then once I finally, get out the tunnel, it's finna be reps.
Obviously one more season of high school ball ahead before you get to run out there through Tillman Tunnel. So when you look ahead for this, upcoming season, what are some of your goals for your senior season?
Sure, I'm trying to hit 2,000 yards this year for receiver for sure. But, the usual, play good. But for me, I'd probably say hopefully try to get some interceptions this year. I was messing around last year, so we gotta see. Offense, probably just try to work on catching the ball more probably and stuff.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guests, Michael Buttert, Tollefson, and Plas Johnson. This is going to be a very active time. Now, Joe, we are going to be back in on the weekly shows because, this is kicking off season 13. We're going to be heating your feeds each and every week, I believe, through January. I think it's when next time we get to take a week off because, the camp's going to be starting up here pretty soon. We'll be ramping up with some great guests to get you ready for the upcoming season as well. And then all camp will be here. The season will be here. Then signing day will be here. The portal opens. It's just mad. There's no breaks for us here.
Then it's 2024 season. We might as well just start previewing that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hoops, baseball's going to, there's no rest for the weary.
There are a lot of sports.
Lots of sports. But in the meantime, you can stay with us on the social media side of things because, again, we made one big announcement early on. One more to go. That'll be coming here pretty soon. It's pretty cool that we'll be excited to share with you all. So make sure you stay locked in on social media at Twitter, SOTD Podcast, on Instagram and Threads at Speak of
Threading it up, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell the point of that app is, because like the Twitter alternative.
I got like 300 followers, dude. Like I'm feeling all right about it. So
We're there. So yeah, at Speak of the Devils on Instagram and Threads, facebook.com/SOTD podcast, and give me a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, whatever, on at bdenny29.
yeah, you can find me on MySpace. I think I got Seize the Day by Avenged Sevenfold is my background song. Some real solid coding in there. I think you guys are gonna like it, get pretty fired up about it.
Is Tom getting in on the cage match between Elon and Zuck?
That's would be a perfect run in. You know,
just
what
come
I'm
in
saying?
with steel chair. Just
I saw like a meme about it with Tom flying off the top rope. So yeah, that's it. So yeah, you can follow me on all the things here. I'm trying to like look at the camera and where the graphics
oh
are.
yeah, it's right there.
This is I'm
You gotta
looking at a
put that
TV
there.
and trying to point at this graphic. I do not feel like I'm doing a very good job. Joe Healy, yeah, it's really not as easy as you would think. Hi, Joe Healy 42 is what I am on social media. And while you're following and patronizing things, how about our sponsors? Of course, DeFalco's Deli, 2334 North Scottsdale Road. Go ahead and eat meals of food every single day of your life. Cactus Sports, you got to gear up. Get on down to Mill Avenue. Check out the store location. Get on cactussports.com. The season is creeping up. You can't be showing up to year one of the Kenny Dillingham era wearing your old Herm Edwards era gear. That's just, I'm a big fashion guy. Fashion is my passion. So you need to be looking right. So get on down to Cactus Sports so you can do just that. devilsdigest.com. Of course, you got to support all the great content that all the good folks, somewhat including me, put out on Devil's Digest. Fall camp is right around the corner, and I'm telling you, if there's any time to be locked in, you got to be locked in now in the coming weeks, because you're going to start to get a flood of content about the Sun Devil football for 2023. No better place to get that than Devil's Digest, of course, part of the Rivals.com network. A subscription there gets you access to a lot of stuff for recruiting, coverage. You're going to love it if you're not already there. Huge shout out to our wonderful friends at Jones Auto Group. They have hooked up some friends of mine. Great experiences. I mean, I'm not just going to refer someone that's close in my life to a company or a salesperson just for the heck of it. Our guy, Parker Jones, Jones Auto Group, they treat people incredibly. They do that for everybody. But if you're a member of the Sun Devil community, like I'm sure that all of you are who are listening and watching, you might get a little extra something. You know what I'm saying? So check out Jones Auto Group. They're doing some incredible things, as you've probably seen, helping out to support Sun Devil athletics and the Sun Devil student athletes when we're talking about the NIL side of things. Can't say enough good things about them. Also, a lot of great things to say about Spaghetti Shack, the expansion. Got to check out the new store location. That's on the top of the list of things that'll be done at some point in the near future. I can guarantee you that. Great stuff. Going to get you some spaghetti. I see that I still need to try. They got like the pizza bread.
The spaghetti
deal.
tacos are great.
I just need to run through the gamut. I usually just go big old pile of spaghetti, ton of meatballs, but I'm gonna diversify here. You can hold me to that. And then of course, last but certainly not least, our wonderful friends at Sun Devil Family Charities. You can catch them online at sundevilfamily.org. Also, as part of the live show that we're going to be doing at the Graduate Hotel there in Tempe, we're going to put together some ideas to help support Sun Devil Family Charity. So that's going to be a component of what we do. So in addition to coming out, seeing the show, hanging out with us, getting a little weird, summoning it up a little bit, there might be an opportunity to support a very good cause. And that's a balance, right? You can act like a little bit of a degenerate, give a little money to a good cause. That's a good
Your conscience is clear.
Conscience is clear. So that'll be a good day. As always, huge thank you to our wonderful sponsors.
Yes, definitely. So when you're done supporting all of those wonderful folks, make sure you drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back for our annual National and Pac-12 preview, where we put some predictions out there on the record, and we'll be joined by ESPN anchor and Sun Devil alum, Matt Berry.